Yo, welcome to the Custom Built Podcast with
JR.
and Coy.
For those of you who don't know, we're brothers.
Yep, I'm 18.
I am 28, an even decade apart. Parents, not sure what happened there, but here we are.
Yeah. In this episode, the first ever episode, we're gonna be talking about Jesse's journey to where he is now, and a little bit of background for the first episode.
And how this whole brothership thing ties into all that, because it comes full circle. So I started a business. It started as me, but now it's like it's literally everybody in the family. So
Yeah, every single person in our immediate family
Yeah.
works here.
yeah, family business to a full T. So my computer's about to die anyway. Might as well just shut it.
That's charging.
All right.
So, where did it start? I mean, when did the ideas start coming in?
Well, I would say when I was, I don't know, when I was a kid, I was like, I always wanted to do my own thing. And that I think is still kind of like what describes me. I'm like very comfortable being alone, doing my own thing, just setting my own path and going about that. So you and I both grew up in the family business, and so Dad's boat repair shop was kind of where we both wound up starting work. Dad started that when
Year I was born.
Yeah. So when I was 10, and he started it and then found out that you were going to happen right after he started it. So, nothing like betting the farm, putting hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line and then finding out that you got a brand new kid coming on the way, right behind that. So that had to be quite a stressor at the time. But anyway, Dad started that business, and I was present sweeping the floors free of any labor charge to him, I think, for a number of years. But, I just had to, I think I just had to kind of be with him because, nobody wants to pay for babysitters and all that and stuff. And I just wound up being around him all the time. I know that I really liked working with him and tagging along, which is more the latter rather than the former. I was doing a lot of tagging along, probably being a big pain in the ass at the, ripe age of 10 years old, not really able to contribute a whole lot, but I was there, and so as time went on and Dad's business grew, I was at some point I started at least getting paid, so that was cool. I don't know what you started at, but I started at $5 an hour.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, awesome. So we were racking up the dollar signs pretty quick there. And so, you start by sweeping floors, and then you go to like being able to maybe take stuff apart. Can't really put it back together, but you take stuff apart. And then I started getting to the point where like winter would roll around and there would be a lot of boat detailing to do. So then that would become kind of my main gig in the winter. And me being me, I wanted to start my own business right away with boat detailing. I remember I had a black 5-gallon bucket with black Sharpie written on it that said like top notch detailing was the name. And I remember I yanked a QuickBook license from somewhere. I don't know if it was Dad's QuickBooks license or whatever, but like I actually had QuickBooks invoices, with like $35, whatever the bill was. It was a lot of ticky tack stuff at the time, but like I tried my best to legitimize this a little bit at the, at the ripe age of not very old, probably like 12, 13, 14. We'll have to have dad on so he can confirm some of these details. But, so I wanted to do my own thing, and I eventually convinced him to let me do that somewhere between the time that I started doing that and got my, QuickBooks thing set up in my 5-gallon bucket. And I'm sure I was under the threshold of income that was taxable for that age. For clarity, there, I've checked that. We're 100% there, so no worries on the formality of that. But that's where it started. He made a little bit of money, and a little bit of money is exciting at that time, and it doesn't take much. Like, you make $100 and you're like, oh man, I'm just, I'm rolling.
Yeah.
So
6th grade.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I spent my winters for like the next, few years buffing boats. So you are polishing the outside of these fiberglass boats, and your arms feel like, a freaking wet noodle at the end of the day, because you're holding this buffing machine, up above your head in the hull of the boats, usually wrap over and back. And it's work, man, but it gave me a little taste of what it felt like to, make a little money and do your own thing. And then, man, that had me like a freaking fish on the line, hook, line, and sinker at that point. So I did not enjoy doing that, but it made some money. And so the next thing was kind of like, okay, well, what do I like doing that could make some money? And then I got into high school and got a couple tech ed classes with Mr. Lee. Shout out to Mr. Lee. That guy is awesome. He is like one of the big reasons outside of like dad and mom that I am here today, to be honest with you, like doing something that's maybe semi notable to some people, right? So he got me going with welding, and then I just like fell in love with that for some reason. And so dad saw that I liked doing the welding, taught me some at home, and also, he had some at work every once in a while. So I did the stuff that was at work because I got pretty handy with a welder in a pretty quick time frame, because I put in the time. There was this channel, I think it's still around, but it was like the only welding channel at the time on YouTube, called weldingtipsandtricks.com.
Still around.
Yeah, I learned a pile from that. So like if I was at school, I was trying to weasel my way into the shop to weld and do stuff in there. And if I was at home, then I was on the computer or the phone, just constantly looking up welding videos, reading welding books. I just turned into a freaking welding nut. And so then, naturally everybody's like, oh, well, I'm gonna do this for a business. So I don't know why, but here I am again, starting kind of an unofficial business, just doing stuff for people. And that's what I did through high school, and just kind of hone my craft a little bit. And that carried me to the point where dad pretty much made me go to college. And by I say pretty much, I felt like he basically made me go to college. He probably would say otherwise, but we'll have that discussion another day. So dad was adamant that I go to college. He really didn't want me to start a business, but I remember standing in the building down where HQ is right now, talking about, oh man, someday I'm going to have a welding shop in here. And dad kind of like, I think just, shrugged it off and was like, oh yeah, well, maybe that'd be cool or whatever. But, I don't think he felt that I was very serious about this.
Our dad used to own the building, well, part of the building that we have now.
Right.
And it was storage.
Right.
For his boats.
Boat storage. So, yeah. So we got through ish college. So, like I said, dad was adamant that I go. So I went. I wasn't happy about it. I wanted to go to welding school. He basically made me go. So I went for manufacturing engineering technology, and I got, nope, back up. I went for my first 2 years at UW Manitowoc for what would have been the start of a like 4-year mechanical engineering degree. I got roughly a year in, and I just like, my whole life I can't do something that my heart's not into. It literally eats me alive. Like if I'm not into it, I just can't do it. So I couldn't take it anymore being at UW Manitowoc doing these classes that's like Calc 2, and I was riding the struggle bus hard. Like, that's not me. I'm not this like theoretical dude. I build stuff. Like that's what I like to do. And I didn't feel like I was building shit, doing Calc 2 and getting like solid C at best. It was terrible. Honestly, like terrible. And so at some point I was like, yo, I can't do this anymore. I got to take this to TC, cut this, I'm not doing 4 years. I'm not going to quit, but at the same time, I'm not doing this for 4 years. I can't. Like, there's no way. So then in my explanation there, I already had I'd found a 2-year manufacturing engineering technology degree at the local tech school. And so I pitched that, and I was like, I guess looking back at it is kind of funny because like I didn't really have to ask for permission, and I had to pay for that shit. So
Yeah.
I don't know why I felt like I needed to ask, but it's one of those things where like everybody wants everybody wants their parents' approval, right? So, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what I did. And so they kind of like okayed that. And so I switched gears a little bit, went to the tech school for the manufacturing engineering tech, I guess you would call it program. And so with that getting started, then I pitched another idea shortly after, which was, going to work at a fab shop, because I was interning at a local manufacturing company in the tech service department, like, being an intern, just being everybody's get the button ready. I was
Already
just
ready.
being everybody's right. So
Love that button.
that's awesome. We just figured out this whole podcast thing. It's pretty fun when you figure
Yeah.
out what all these buttons do. So I shouldn't say we haven't figured out. We're making a go at it.
Rambling through it.
Yeah, we're going. So, like, I was in tech school. Tech school was better, but I had this job. I hated it. So now it was pretty much the same thing as the freaking 4-year school program. I felt like I had to ask mother and father if I could, get out of this whole internship thing, because I think I had enough of it done at that time where I didn't really need any more to graduate or anything like that. So I was good. So I'm like, I really want to go work at a fab shop. And so I got applied, took a weld test, kind of struggled through that, but got it done. And so I got the job, and when I got the job, I was pretty much done with school at that point, or like taking, part-time classes so I could do mostly work. And so I wrapped up the manufacturing engineering technology thing, and Dad was not thrilled, but basically I wrapped up my manufacturing engineering technology course and wound up working in a fab shop. So got what I wanted, not exactly what he wanted, because obviously he expected me to like have some fancy engineering job or whatever, but it is what it is. So I was doing what I liked and worked there for a year, did some side gigs, kind of still maintaining what I had going on in high school. And then at the I don't know, I think it was like a year and a half. It wasn't very long, but I learned a lot. And like that would be the highlight. I learned a lot. I learned how to you know, how to like be one of the boys at work and get along with everybody, how to take orders from somebody other than your dad. Got in trouble a little bit because that was kind of a new thing for me. And, you know, I still kind of always want to do my own thing and whatever. But at some point, fairly early on there, the boss man was on vacation. And when he went on vacation, I ran out of work for I was doing like 4 different part numbers, you know, just kind of like production welding. And so I ran out of work and I didn't know what to do. Nobody really had anything for me. So they called it the fit bin. So there was a bin of travelers. So these are like job details in little laminated sleeves that was sitting there. And that had, you know, there was work to be done there. And it was like these simple parts. Some of them were simple parts that you could fit together, tack up, and get ready for the welders to weld, because there it was fitters fit and welders welded. And there was like 3-ish fitters, including me. Once I got going, I think there was 2 guys fitting at first. And then I joined the party and kind of switched from welding to that. But that's fast forwarding a little bit. So once I started grabbing travelers out of there and fit together a couple jobs, and I get them checked, and everybody was like, what the are you doing? Like, you can't be just, you know, doing this stuff. But I'm like, I don't have anything else to do, and I'm not going to stand here and do nothing. So if I'm fitting them up and you guys check them and they're cool, like, I'm just going to keep doing this. I don't know what else to do. And dude's gone, you know, and it was for like a week. So this probably happened in the beginning of the week. By the time he came back the next week, I had a few under my belt, and he comes strolling up to me, which never happens. So I'm like, oh shit, here we go. And he's like, yo, so I hear you've been fitting stuff together. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what else to do. And from what I vaguely remember, he kind of like loosely commended me, but in a very cautious way, you know, kind of like, all right, like, you can keep going, but I'm fucking watching you, you know?
Yeah, once he slipped.
Yeah. So I think everybody was kind of expecting that to happen. But, you know, I just kept fitting parts together, and I like doing that because, I mean, I have a pretty short attention span sometimes. So just like running a bead all day is not exactly what I'm looking for out of life. I like being challenged. And, you know, so at that place, it was heavy fab. You get all the parts cut. They're on a skid or multiple skids, you know, big tubes, like some as big as this room, which is probably like 15 by 15 by, you know, 8 feet tall. Like anything from the size of this laptop to that big, I fit together, you know, stuff for cranes. And, you know, that was the bigger stuff, but also stuff for little paper mill trinkets, you know, whatever the deal was. So fit it all together. And as I proved that I could do it, you know, the parts that I grabbed were bigger and bigger and bigger. And kind of like you said, I felt like everybody was just kind of waiting for me to have some big fuck up and, you know, get booted off of the fitting crew, but I didn't. And so, you know, I use that as an example now when I talk to people about, like, it's not always just doing exactly what's in front of you that's going to get you where you're wanting to go. If you're really wanting to do something notable, like, there's going to come opportunities that are not like a here you go opportunity, but like it's there, and you have to have, you know, a little bit of balls to go do it. You have to be ready for it. So, you know, it's that whole like luck is preparation meets opportunity thing. And like, it was there, and I sure as hell wasn't going to stand around, because like dad didn't raise no losers that like just milk the clock and go home. You know, that wasn't going to happen. So I was going to do something with
Stand by that time card machine.
Yeah, hell no. Hell no. So I was going to do something, and I just, you know, had the cojones enough to go over there and risk getting yelled at or maybe even fired or whatever if I messed up. But like, I believed in myself, and I went and did it. So there's people here that I give the same spiel to that, you know, it's like, I'm not going to be around every minute to, like, you know, hand select opportunities and throw them your way. But like, there's going to be stuff that you'll notice that you can do something about, and you have to take the initiative to go do it. And you'll know if you can take the initiative by how much homework you've done. And like, I watched so many welding tips and tricks videos about everything under the sun, from fitting to welding to prep work to like all that, and then just learned a little bit in the short time that I was there. Like, I knew I could do it. Or, now, like, what I always say is, I just I don't know all the answers, and I know that I don't know all the answers, but what I do know is that I'll figure it out. Because, starting the business, this is fast forwarding a little bit, but starting the business from nothing, like a building that you could see right through the ceiling, to now a couple different buildings and 50 people and all that stuff. Like, I've had to figure out a lot of shit along the way. And so all I know at this point is whatever is dropped in front of me, I know that I'll figure it out. And getting yourself to the point where you have that level of confidence is like, is the big thing. Because if you just know that you can figure out whatever gets plopped in front of you, well, then I guess that means that whatever gets plopped in front of you, you'll be able to overcome. So anything that you want to do, you can figure it out. That when you realize you get to that point and you honestly believe that, that's like a monumental thing. But anyway, like I said, that's fast forwarding a little bit. So I did that. I earned my keep as a fitter, and I got to the point where, it was kind of like a flex, like the bigger fitting table you had, that,
Yeah.
that showed that you were like able to do the big stuff. So I started out with a little table that was about like this, even narrower than this, actually. I think it was one little acorn thing. And then it was about 4 of these tables put together. Well, actually, probably about 6, because it was pretty long too. So it was really wide and really long. And so that was kind of like, I felt like I was like the guy. Actually, now that I think about that, that's another really good example. So this table was sitting outside, okay? And this table was like out in the rain, but it's a big cast iron table, so it can kind of just sit out there and it's fine. They bought it on clearance from, some auction, whatever, for like nothing burger, and it was packed full of, it must have been a shot blasting table, because it was packed full of all this shot blasting stuff, and it had T-slot grids that went up and down. So it was completely full of shit. And so I think what happened that day was, I had a really big part. My table was really smaller than it should have been to build that part and make sure it was all square plumb level, da da da. And I knew this thing was sitting outside, and I was just like, here we go again. I didn't ask anybody. I just went and grabbed the big ass forklift that they had that could pick this thing up, and threw it on some sawbucks, and cleaned it off. I remember it was so full of dust, and all this shot blasting media and stuff. I had to get some of it off of there, at least, to even be able to have a flat surface on top. And I remember I was debating like blowing it off, because usually at the end of every day there, people would blow out their areas, but it got to be like a big plume of dust. Well, this table was going to make way more dust, so like, I took the air nozzle and I blew it a little bit, because I'm nervous that somebody's going to come yell at me for grabbing this table, but I needed it and I wanted to do bigger stuff. So I kind of weaseled my way, grabbed the table, got it in there, got it on bucks, took the air nozzle, blew it a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the dust that was all in there is like way dry. It was terrible. And I could see it was going to make a gigantic mess. So I grabbed a broom and I went on top of the table and swept it off just enough that I could use it. And as I was sweeping, I remember all the little shot blasting BBs rolling all over the table and all over the floor. It was such a freaking mess, but I got it there and nobody yelled at me. So I was like, okay, we're good. So then I went and grabbed all the parts and I started fitting, and now I had this big table. So I kind of weaseled my way into having this big table, but I thought I was pretty cool. I was like 20 at the time, and I was fitting, the stuff that the big guys there were doing, and so I thought I was doing pretty good.
Big dog.
Yeah. So, that's another one of those, like, the opportunities there. I probably could have went and found some little work, but like, I wanted to prove myself. I wanted the big table. I wanted to be one of the boys, even though I was like 25 years younger. As far as like, I wanted to, sit with the fitters, because that was the thing, and be able to talk like I know what the hell I'm doing, or at least fake it. So I got the table, started doing some bigger stuff, and life was good. I learned a lot. Year and a half went by, and I got an opportunity to go work on the road, and so I did that. I I said yes to the opportunity working on the road, and then in that same like 3 week span that I was going to put my 2 weeks in and all that stuff, I actually I was doing side work, and I had them cut like a piece for one of my side jobs, and you know I wasn't trying to like do anything wrong or anything like that, but they got really they found out that it was for a side job, and I just put in like the request and went through the normal steps. I should have just told them that it was for like a what they called like a for profit thing, da da da. But like I just asked them to cut stuff because that was a normal thing, and I didn't think anything of it. But when I did that, then they found out that it was for like a for profit job, and I didn't even get a chance to turn in my 2 weeks because I got shit canned from there. So like I had verbally given the commitment that I was going to go work on the road, um, building these stainless pools on like rooftops and stuff for like big hotels. So I called the guy, and I think where I was at with that at that time was like I had told him like, yeah, I'll do it, but I got to turn in my 2 weeks, and we were both under the understanding that it was going to be a couple weeks, a few weeks before I was done with that, and then I was going to like take a minute, get ready to travel and all that stuff, and then I was going to go work on the road with him. Well, now I got shit canned, so that really sped up that whole time frame. So I called him, I explained what happened, and I'm like, right now, like I'm embarrassed about this. Like this is not how I planned on this to go down. And being in a small town, now the rumors are going around. I just want to get the fuck out of here. So I was like, are you working on a job? He was in Cincinnati, and I went and basically loaded my shit up and went to Cincinnati, and joined up with him and started working on this first pool job that we had, and that took like 3 weeks. And so the cool part about it was, despite how that whole gig at my last place that I worked at ended, I was now officially on my own. This was a legit, like, I filed for an LLC. I had a legitimate QuickBooks account this time to like track all my expenses and all that. And I was working as a subcontractor for Billy. Um, Family friend, kind of got the hookup through that. And he knew I could weld. And so he needed some help. So, it worked out. I went out there, welded on that first job, and it was really cool. Like, you're 20 some years old. Now I'm all of a sudden driving my own truck all across the country, working as a subcontractor. Like, here again, I felt like, damn, like, all right, the last thing didn't exactly conclude like I wanted it to, but this is cool. I'm taking a step in the direction of doing my own thing. Cause here again, even though dad wanted me to go to college, dad didn't want me to work at a fab shop, all that was out of the goodness of his heart, because like he knew what it was going to take to run a business, and I was too stubborn to listen. And so he kind of wanted to protect me from all that stress and all that stuff. So pretty normal, deal there. I didn't listen. I did my own thing anyway and weaseled into getting my own business a couple years later. And, I was rolling at that point as far as like I was doing it. So there was no turning back. So I did that for about a year, went to New York, to Cincinnati a bunch of times, went down to like Missouri, all over the place, did a bunch of cool jobs, learned a lot of really cool stuff that you don't learn in a fab shop, because when you're working in the construction side of things, you're using a string line and a level. In a fab shop, you're using, a straight edge and a square. not that you don't use a square in construction, but like it's just a completely different animal. Everything kind of works off of, a 0 point on a print and, straight level plumb from there. You gotta figure it out with all different tools, different methods. So that was a really cool way to sort of like expand my skill set. And this was a lot of TIG welding. So we got to TIG weld, and man, like working with Billy, you learn how to work. It's not about, when you're working on your own, it's not about making a perfect little, ballpoint tip size weld and taking, 4 minutes to go 4 inches. It's turn that thing up to 200 and you're literally welding. I think we ran it at 200 amps, but you're literally welding this fast. You're pulling this down this gutter that runs around the entire pool, and there's like a outside corner joint that runs around the entire pool. So you got a stick welding glove on because these air cooled torches get so hot they literally melt and fall apart. The collets get so hot that they twist and they're junk. But you just like, it's not it's a completely different mindset because it's not a question of like how pretty can it be or da 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 da. It's still got to look good, it's still got to hold, but like you got, you bid the job for 2 or 3 weeks. He's there on, his own business. I'm there on my own business. You want to make money. You want to see how many of these jobs you can fit in, and the faster you can get them done with still good quality, the more that you can make, because the more jobs you can do inside of a year or a month or whatever. So, you're freaking running the torches as hot as they'll go, as fast as you can. Like I said, you're literally pulling that torch this fast. I mean, it's crazy. And it's a whole nother skill set to learn. It's a different mindset. So I learned a pile from Billy. He's still a good friend of mine, to this day. And I did that for like a year or so, I think. And then the pool business, he's been doing this for decades and it never really got slow, not to this point. But all of a sudden it got really slow. And when it did, I had to do something because, like, he's been doing this for decades. He's got savings and all that. He doesn't need to be constantly on the road. But, like, I have no pot to piss in nor window to throw it out of. So, like, I got to keep fucking working. And at the same time that he slowed down with the pool thing, I was still doing side projects at home. And one of those side projects turned into a contract at that point, or at least was in the works to turn into a contract. And that was then going to open the door to me actually starting the shop. So at that point, I transitioned to, doing more at home to try to get ready for that. And when I got the first prototype order, I did the first prototype and sent it back. And I think inside of probably like 2 months, as I was phasing out of the pool stuff, they gave us the go ahead to like start out with this contract, because the people that were supposed to have it kind of fell on their face. So they had to react pretty fast and find a new place to have the parts made at. And so I made some prototypes. They were happy. And at the point where I segue out of the pool biz and into having an opportunity to start a fab shop, that story gets to be so long that we're going to have to tell you about it in the next episode.